course. She's passionate about design, systems, and working while traveling, but Indy is always home base. Welcome, Alex.
All right, thanks everybody. So yeah, just a little more introduction about me. Hey, I'm Alex. I'm a senior product designer at Contra, but a little bit about me is I'm an Indy native, so born and raised, but I'm currently living in Broad Ripple with my husband, who is a senior front-end engineer. And I'm sure if anyone knows that engineering design relationship dynamic, those are super fun conversations. But also up on the screen is our dog Coda, which I'm sure you know from that picture. He runs the show. But I've added a few fun facts up there. But when I heard about this theme for this year's Indy Design Week, Emergence, I knew that I wanted to share my story about how past decisions and influences have really shaped the designer that I am today. So, without further ado, here's my product design journey. How I started as a nursing student and ended up as a product designer at a startup. So, creativity has followed me all of my life. I was always painting, dabbling in ceramics, taking photos, throwing them into Photoshop. I did an independent art study all 4 years of high school with a teacher who really pushed me to, explore my creativity. The problem was, in my career, I wanted to help people, and I didn't know how to do that with art. In Indiana, I'm pretty sure we're taught in school. It's healthcare or business. So by the time I graduated, I had already accomplished quite a few dual credit classes towards that nursing degree. So I was ready to go. And so fast forward through, a summer of in anticipation, waiting for my career to start, I was met with a lot of disappointment. And fast forward through a miserable first semester of pre-nursing classes, and a very memorable night at a library where I just threw an eraser at the wall, I decided that nursing was out. So the first thing that I had to do was tell the parents, which, let's be honest, is the scariest part of this entire journey. I was met with a lot of confusion, hesitance, and finally one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received. You have to do what you love. Thanks, Dad. And so once the Band-Aid had been ripped off, I did a lot of exploration, and I actually ended up taking a career assessment test. And guess what was number one? That's right, a bartender. And so there you go, the decision was made. However, coming in hot at number two was a visual designer. And so like I said, being born and raised in the Midwest, my knowledge about the world of design was pretty limited. I had heard about graphic designers, of course, and that sounded pretty neat. But I had no idea how much further that, design professionally spread. It didn't matter though, because after reading that little description, I was convinced that this was my dream career. So I was fortunate enough to attend Holland School of Art and Design right here in Indianapolis. And from the moment that I started that first design class, I knew that I had made the right decision. Still, I had no idea how broad my world was opening up by getting a degree in visual communication design. So, after 2 years in the program, the dream career that I and my fellow classmates had for ourselves was working at one of the local brand, print, marketing agencies, all of which had an open floor plan and a beer fridge. And what could possibly be better than that? So still, yeah. And so I completed 2 internships during this period, both which, checked off that dream career. And one even had a Nerf gun nurse in the office, which, to be honest, well, I drew the line. But in all seriousness, though, this is when I learned that I didn't really vibe with the office life, especially the part where my physical presence was a commitment. And I learned that I was much more productive when I had the freedom to choose my work environment. So, turning back to college, the back half was really focused on user experience, which I found fast and hard. And this is when I truly understood the sheer impact that design can have in the world. And so in addition to user experience, we focused heavily on UI design for the last few semesters. And for my senior thesis, I did the UI UX of a greenhouse app, which, looking at it now, has some of the worst contrast issues I have ever seen, but we all start somewhere. So as graduation approached, I started, browsing local job listings, but I didn't feel the spark with any of them. And this, paired with PTSD of office life, sent me scrambling to find the perfect post-graduation job that I didn't want to admit didn't exist. So what did I do? I applied for every remote company I could find, which were few and far between because the pandemic had not yet created the culture boom. And so, was underqualified for most of them, all of them. And, I got through a few rounds with some companies, but of course they all ended up with a more experienced candidate. So, with graduation getting closer and closer, I started thinking about a non-traditional career. And so I had freelanced multiple times throughout school, and the thought of being an independent designer was incredibly exciting. Not only could I choose who I wanted to work with, when I wanted to work, but it also really accomplished those career goals that I wanted. Being an independent designer meant a more direct impact between my work and real people. So even though I was terrified on taking on the risks, the unknowns, the networking, I decided that the prospect of freedom in a career was worth it. And so at first, I focused mostly on work for small businesses, so brand strategy, branding, web design. And as much as I loved iterating, on a bomb logo, my favorite part was brand strategy, really understanding the ideal customer for the business and designing for them. And so after a while, I started switching gears. I took on larger businesses as clients. And this is when I was able to collaborate with other designers, which I loved. And so, while I still worked on some branding projects, my roles became more web-focused, and I took more of the UX-based route. And things really started shifting gears when one of the remote companies that I had interviewed before graduation reached out and said, hey, do you want to join our team as a contractor to help design a conference experience? And I was like, yes, please. Anyone who has worked as a full-time freelancer knows that having one client is the best thing that you can do for your mental health. And so not only did I love working with our small team of designers, I enjoyed working in a more tech-focused environment. And above all, I was obsessed with working on the app for the conference. It was the best. And it was with this client that I realized that product design, for me, was the ultimate opportunity to make a real impact on people. So, independent life was rewarding, exhausting, like all great things. It allowed me to explore and learn various aspects of design. I really understood the value of flexible and remote work. I learned how to run an entire business by myself. And, I could make plans, I could travel, and I could take as many mental health days as I wanted, all while making money. And seeing that flexibility is on there twice is because it was very important. On the flip side, it took major headspace to keep up with the communication, the client management, the payments, the invoices, the taxes, the bills, the write-offs. And on top of all of this, you had to do the actual work. So I was excited, but I was definitely hesitant when I first thought about transitioning in a full-time role, since I had such passion for that flexible and remote work. Fortunately this time though, the job search looked a lot different this time around. Remote listings were booming, thanks COVID, and I was drawn towards the small tech startup world where I could directly make a difference in someone's life. And while there were a lot of companies that I thought were interesting, it was hard to find a product that I truly resonated with. Then, cue the angel noise, I found the company. Contra, a platform for independent remote workers, had a listing for a product designer. Bonus points if you had experience as a freelancer. Could this be it? The interview process was intimidating, it was rewarding, it kept my hopes high, and as the last piece of it, I was given a design challenge where I could really flex my UX thinking. And so I cleared an entire wall in my apartment, threw those stickies up there, and created a life-size user journey map. And guess what? I got it. And the coolest part is I'm still at Contra today, even more confident that this was the path for me. So, the main reason I wanted to be a nurse was to help people. And now I help the future of independent work and create tools that enable and empower this new workforce. A user base that I empathize with, I understand, and I'm driven to help succeed. So as a product designer, I'm directly helping make a bigger impact on the world. It just looks a little different. So, what are my takeaways for you? One, everyone's path is different. My career path was far from linear, as you just heard. And in design, that's what's so cool is there's not a correct path. Instead, that path is what shapes you into the unique designer that you are. So sharing one of my favorite quotes from Karen Walrond, comparison kills creativity. Nobody can do it with your voice, your experience, your insight. Your path is your superpower. Second, the world of design is huge. Seriously though, I'm constantly amazed how design makes space for literally everyone. So remember, if you're unsatisfied or unfulfilled in your current position, there's a space for you. And lastly, you gotta do what you're afraid to do. I had to end on a cheesy one, but it's true. We all have those things, that we want so badly, but fear and comfort are holding us back. If I had been too afraid to switch career paths, to start freelancing, to stop freelancing, I wouldn't have found my purpose in design. Another example is I've always wanted to talk at a conference, and here I am, shaking, scared as hell, talking to all of you. So here's your sign to do what you're afraid to do. And with that, I want to thank you all for coming and listening, supporting Indie Design Week. Please reach out to me. I would love to connect. So thanks, everybody.